My name is Mabel, and I'm 26 years old. I always believed that family, at its core, meant unconditional love. That belief shattered at 3:15 in the morning, under the harsh fluorescent lights of the Massachusetts General Hospital emergency room. I was lying on a gurney after a devastating car crash. Every breath, a fresh wave of agony. The doctor told me I had internal bleeding and needed emergency surgery, but there was a problem. Because of a bad reaction to anesthesia I'd had years ago, they needed to use a different protocol. And for that, hospital policy required family consent. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely dial. I called my parents, Robert and Linda. Voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. I left increasingly desperate messages. An hour crawled by. Finally, my phone lit up. A text message from my father. Can't this wait? We're busy meeting with clients. Busy. I was staring at a text message that basically told me to hold off on my emergency surgery because they were busy. Have you ever felt like the invisible one in your own family? Let me know your story down in the comments. And don't forget to hit subscribe, because you won't want to miss this journey. I broke down. A harsh, racking sob tore through my chest, making my broken ribs scream. The physical pain was nothing compared to the realization of how utterly alone I was. A kind male nurse named Ben and a social worker, Maria, were at my side in an instant. Maria asked gently, "Mabel, is there anyone else? Another relative we can call?" Through my tears, I gave them the only other number I had. My grandpa, William, my mother's father. Maria stepped out to make the call. "He's on his way," she said, returning a few minutes later. "He said he'll be there in under an hour." He lived 50 miles away, outside the city. But sure enough, less than an hour later, Grandpa William rushed through the doors. He was 74, a retired carpenter, and he still had sawdust on his old flannel shirt. He came right to my bedside, his weathered hands wrapping around my good one. "Oh, Mabe," he whispered, and that one word held more love than I'd felt in my entire life. He listened intently as the doctor explained the situation. He asked sharp, practical questions about the risks. Then, he took the clipboard and signed the consent forms with a steady hand. As they wheeled me toward the OR, he leaned down and kissed my forehead. "I'll be right here when you wake up. Gito. Don't you worry." When I woke up hours later, groggy and disoriented, the first thing I saw was his familiar shape in the chair next to my bed. He'd stayed. His silver hair was messy, and he was halfway through a crossword puzzle. But he was there. Zaying him, my protector, unleashed a flood of memories. A whole lifetime of emotional neglect, compressed into one painful realization. My parents, Robert and Linda, were prominent financial advisors in Newton. They lived in a sleek, modern condo that looked like a magazine cover, and valued things only by their price tag. I remembered their faces when I told them I was taking a job as a nonprofit coordinator. "That's nice, Mabel," my mother had said, her smile tight. "But it doesn't really pay, does it?" My father was worse. When I proudly showed them my first car, a used Toyota Corolla with 85,000 miles on it, he just sighed. "When are you going to get serious? Mabel, this is why you should have gone into finance." But Grandpa William, he was different. When my parents skipped my college graduation for a conference in the Bahamas, Grandpa William was there, sitting in the rain, holding a bouquet of daisies. He was the one who taught me how to work with my hands, how to throw clay on a wheel and paint ceramics. Anything made with love is worth more than something bought with money, he'd always say. He was the one who showed up. He was always the only one who showed up. And now, in the most terrifying moment of my life, he was the only one there again. 4 days after my surgery, my parents finally made an appearance. They walked into my hospital room, not with concern, but with an air of profound inconvenience. My father, Robert, was already checking his phone. My mother, Linda, handed me a small bag of drugstore candy, the kind you buy at a gas station. "Well, you look better," my mother said, her eyes darting around the room, avoiding my face. "The parking here is just awful." "Mabel," my father complained, pacing near the window. "We had to circle for 20 minutes. They stayed for exactly 35 minutes. In that time, my mother complained about a client who was being difficult, and my father asked me, "So, what's the timeline? When do they think you can get back to work?" Not, "Are you in pain?" Not, "What did the doctor say?" But, "When can you be productive again?" They left to make a dinner appointment. As the door clicked shut, the silence they left behind was louder and more painful than their empty chatter. A few days later, the medical team came to discuss my discharge. "Your apartment is on the second floor, correct?" the doctor asked. I nodded. "With your leg and shoulder, you won't be able to manage stairs for at least 6 weeks. A wave of panic hit me. I had nowhere to go. My parents' sleek, modern condo was famously not set up for guests. Before I could even spiral, a firm, familiar voice spoke up from the chair in the corner. "She's coming home with me," Grandpa William said. He'd been there every single day. He told the doctor he was retired. His house was 1 level, and he'd already built a temporary ramp for the front steps. Just like that, it was settled. Moving into his small, the repaired house was like breathing clean air for the first time. He set me up in the guest room, brought me meals he'd cooked himself, and sat with me for hours while I endured the painful physical therapy. But in the quiet moments, in the dead of night, I'd lie awake and wrestle with a question that shamed me. Why? After everything they'd done, did I still check my phone? Hoping for a text from them. Why did that 35-minute visit, as insulting as it was, still feel like something I had wanted? I'd read about this in a psychology class. It's a concept called learned helplessness. It's what happens when you're in a painful, negative situation for so long that your brain simply stops trying to find a way out. You learn to endure the pain as normal. For 26 years, I had been trained to accept their emotional neglect. A child who only gets validation once in a blue moon learns to crave it. To see those tiny, worthless crumbs, as if they were a feast. My parents had conditioned me to be grateful for any scrap of attention they'd give. No matter how cold or brief, I wasn't weak. I was trained. And lying in that quiet house, surrounded by my grandpa's unconditional love, I finally realized that the training was over. As I started to heal physically, the administrative nightmare began. My neighbor, Sarah, a sweet teacher who lived in the unit below mine, had been collecting my mail. She brought over a huge, overflowing box of letters. "I didn't want to bother you while you were, you know," she said, her eyes full of sympathy, but it just kept piling up. I thanked her and sat at Grandpa William's kitchen table, a stack of envelopes in front of me. At first, it was just the usual medical bills that made my stomach clench, insurance statements. But then, I found things that didn't make sense. Confusing letters from my disability insurance provider, the policy I had through my job, and my private investment portfolio. I called my disability insurance company first. After 20 minutes on hold, a polite representative finally picked up. I explained who I was and that I was trying to sort out my claim. There was a long pause. "Ma'am," the representative said slowly, "we've already been in communication with your financial proxies regarding this account." Ice water dumped into my veins. "My what who?" "Your parents, Robert and Linda," he said. "They contacted us. Let's see. 3 days after your accident, they were inquiring about the protocol for liquidating the entire fund." Liquidating. Not accessing. Liquidating. My mind flashed back 2 years. I was sitting in my father's sleek, glass-walled office. He had insisted on helping me set up my first real investment portfolio and my supplemental disability insurance. It's just standard procedure. Mabel, he'd said, sliding a pen across the desk. We'll just add me and your mother as financial proxies. It's all part of the family portfolio. Makes it easier to manage. I'd been grateful. I thought he was finally taking an interest in my life. My future. Now I realized he was just setting a trap. My hands were shaking. But not from weakness. It was a cold, clinical anger. I hung up with the insurance rep and immediately dialed my father. He answered on the second ring. His voice breezy. Mabel, we were just wondering when you'd be calling. Why did you try to liquidate my disability fund? The silence on the other end was heavy. Now, Mabel, he finally said, his tone shifting to the condescending one he used with difficult clients. Listen, the market is down. It's a bad time. We were just looking to restructure your assets. Move that money before it lost value. Move it where? Dad, I pressed. My voice dangerously quiet. It's just a simple restructure. Move it where? Dad, he snapped. The polished veneer cracked, and the raw frustration underneath poured out. The firm is having some cash flow issues. If you must know, it's a temporary loan. You'll get it back. Don't be so dramatic. A temporary loan. He was planning to use the money I needed to survive while I couldn't work to plug a hole in his failing business. This wasn't neglect. This was theft. I hung up the phone. But the cold realization was just beginning. It wasn't just the disability fund. I went back to the pile of mail Sarah had brought. My hands sorted through the medical bills, the insurance spam, and then I found it. An official-looking envelope from a different bank. One I didn't even have an account with. I tore it open. It was a loan rejection letter. But it wasn't for a credit card. It was a letter declining an application for a home equity line of credit. The address listed on the application was my apartment. My condo. My father had co-signed for my condo 2 years ago. I didn't have enough credit history on my own. And he'd insisted. It's just a formality. Mabel, he'd said. Just to help you get started. He had used that formality to try and drain the equity from my home. The application date was 2 days after my accident. While I was in the ICU. He wasn't just trying to liquidate my disability fund. He was actively trying to leverage my home to save his failing business. All the sadness I'd felt in the hospital. The learned helplessness. It all evaporated. It was replaced by something sharp and cold and clear. This wasn't a family dispute. This wasn't neglect. This was predation. They were circling my assets like vultures, waiting for me to be weak enough so they could pick me apart. I didn't cry this time. I looked up at Grandpa William, who was watching me from the doorway, his face etched with worry. I didn't have to say a word. I just handed him the letter. He read it, his face growing thunderous. He stared at it for a long, silent minute. Then, he put the letter down on the table, walked past me into his small study, and came back holding an old, cracked leather address book. He flipped through the pages, his finger tracing a list of names. And then he picked up the landline phone on the wall. He dialed a number from memory. Harrison, he said, into the phone. It's William. Yes. It's been a long time. I'm good. But I'm calling about my granddaughter. She's in trouble. He listened for a moment, then held the phone out to me. Mr. Harrison will talk to you. I took the phone. Mr. Harrison. A lawyer my grandpa had known for 40 years. Listened patiently as I explained everything. My voice steady and cold. I told him about the hospital, the text, the 35-minute visit. And then I told him about the disability fund and the home equity loan application. There was a long silence on the other end. Mabel, he finally said, his voice calm and serious. what your parents have done, it's not just unethical. It's potentially fraudulent. They used their position of trust to gain access, and they attempted to act on it without your consent while you were incapacitated. We can fix this. And we can fix it now. What do we do? I asked. You rest. You heal, he said. And I could hear him scribbling on a legal pad. I am going to draft a full revocation of power of attorney. A cease and desist notification for both of them. And new power of attorney documents naming your grandfather for both medical and financial decisions. I'll have them ready by tomorrow. When I hung up the phone, the betrayal still stung. But for the first time, I felt a flicker of power. This wasn't a family drama anymore. This was a legal fight. And I was finally ready. 4 weeks to the day after my accident, I called my parents and asked them to come to Grandpa William's house. I was off the painkillers. My mind was clear. And I was steady on a pair of crutches. They arrived at 2 p.m. Clearly annoyed. My father, Robert, walked in first. And not even looking at me. Mabel, this is very inconvenient. We have a 3 o'clock showing. Whatever this is, can it be quick? He stopped when he saw the setup in the living room. I was sitting in an armchair, my injured leg propped up. On one side of me sat Grandpa William, his hands folded calmly in his lap. On the other side sat Mr. 2, Harrison, in a full suit, holding a briefcase. My mother, Linda, saw him and her professional smile faltered. What? What's going on? Who is this? Please, sit down, I said. My voice was even. It surprised me how steady it was. They sat on the sofa opposite me. I reached for a simple manila envelope on the coffee table and slid it toward them. My father scoffed. What's this? More medical bills. These, I said, meeting his gaze, are legal documents. They are a full revocation of any and all power of attorney you hold over me, medical or financial. They are cease and desist notifications, and they are papers that remove you as proxies and beneficiaries from every one of my accounts and insurance policies, effective immediately. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. Mabel. No. How could you, after everything we've done for you? My father's face turned a deep, blotchy red. The mask of the successful financial advisor was gone. Ungrateful, he yelled, standing up. This is how you repay us. We were trying to protect your assets. The word protect hung in the air. So vile it made me sick. I looked at him. Not with the anger he was showing, but with a cold, quiet finality. Protect them? I asked. Or liquidate them, like how you applied for a home equity loan on my condo while I was in surgery. The room went completely silent. My mother stopped crying. She just stared at me, her mouth open. Mr. Harrison and my grandpa didn't move. My father's face went pale. The rage was gone, replaced by the hollow shock of being caught. He sat back down. Hard. He had nothing to say. He'd been so sure of his own intelligence, so sure of my weakness, that he never imagined he'd be held accountable. You don't know the pressure we're under, my mother finally whispered, her voice trembling. The firm. I know, I said, cutting her off. But your failing career isn't my problem. Not anymore. Sign the papers. We sit there and watch people do this, and we feel a sense of guilt. We're taught that blood is supposed to be thicker than water. That family is forever. But that's a weapon toxic people use to keep you trapped. They count on your guilt. They count on your sentimentality. They rely on the fact that you'll keep setting yourself on fire to keep them warm. Sometimes, letting go of blood ties isn't an act of betrayal. It's the ultimate act of self-preservation. It's not about finding hate. It's about finally, choosing to find yourself. It's the moment you stop being their victim and start being your own rescuer. My father, his hands shaking with rage, snatched a pen from his jacket and scribbled his name on the documents. My mother signed after him, her tears staining the paper. They left. They didn't say another word. My father didn't look back. The door closed. And the silence in my grandpa's living room was absolute. I let out a breath. I felt like I'd been holding for 26 years. The weeks that followed were about rebuilding. Not just my body, but my entire life. With Mr. Free Harrison's help, I secured my finances. We set up new accounts at a different bank, created new passwords for everything, and put fraud alerts on my credit. I sold the condo. I couldn't stand the thought of living there. Knowing my father had seen it as just another asset to strip, I found a small, new apartment on the ground floor. One with wide doorways and a small patio. Grandpa William came over and built a sturdy wooden ramp for the entrance. "Just until you're steady on your feet," he said. But I knew he built it to last. I went back to my job at the nonprofit. But I wasn't the same person. The experience had forged something new in me. I used what I'd learned, the legal loopholes, the insurance nightmare, the vulnerability of being a patient, and I pitched a new program to my boss. A program that provides free, legal, and financial advocacy for survivors of major medical events, protecting them from exactly this kind of predatory exploitation. My life is quiet now, but it's full. Last night, I hosted dinner in my new apartment. My chosen family was there. Grandpa William was teaching Ben, the nurse from the hospital, how to cheat at cards. My neighbor Sarah brought a pie. We ate. We laughed. And I looked around at the hand-painted ceramic bowls I'd made, now full of food and shared with people I loved. And that's when I realized I was finally whole. If you're listening to this, and you're one of those people who has always felt like you were on the fringes of your own family, I want you to hear something. You are not defined by the love you didn't receive. Your worth is not determined by their inability to see you. You are not a supporting character in their story. You are the lead in yours. Building a family is not about blood. It's about who shows up. It's about who listens. It's about who respects you, who protects you, and who, when you are broken, sits with you in the dark and then helps you build a ramp. Don't be afraid to let go of what's hurting you. Don't be afraid to choose yourself. Your real family, the one that's waiting for you, will be there to catch you. Thank you for listening.